Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, just want to make sure you're awake. A year ago, after Brenda Robertson, Faith Kreider, and myself gave a summer service called The Way We Were, Remembering the 70s, a thought cropped up, why not have a sequel? Sequels are always popular. And so this morning we're going to have the Gerry Krick years, 1979 to 1998. As the idea for the service marinated over the winter, and remembrances of that period increasingly came to mind, I realized more fully not only my feelings for Gerry. Actually, I had dreams about Gerry last night. It's strange. But also all the things that came about during his tenure. Or as Noreen Kimball put it, the thing that was amazing was that things happened all around him. In short, let 100 flowers blossom. This morning, Barbara Bates, Peter Smith, and I are going back to the future where many flowers did indeed blossom and are still blossoming today. Clearly what we say this morning will not be the last word. Many of you carry personal remembrances which you may want to share. For that reason, we will allow time at the end of the service for you to tell us of them.
I just have to say something before Jay leaves us in this chalice lighting. I don't know whether many of you know this story, but in the 90s, Gerry tried to do away with this chalice lighting. He kept on introducing other chalice lightings, and the congregation just rose up and said, "No, you can't do this!" And so finally, one of us went up to talk to Gerry and said, "Why are you doing this?" He says, "Well, I'm bored with it." I said, "You're bored with it?" "Yeah, I wrote it."
We light this chalice as a symbol of the spirit of life that fills us all.
In the Spirit, we are all one, children and adults, men and women, all people everywhere.
A single spirit, a boundless radiance, unites us all.
Let the light of life and love burn brightly in our souls, healing all that divides us.
The flame of life within us is a priceless gift.
We gather here to celebrate the rapture, the sadness, and the mystery of this day.
Hi, I'm Barbara Bates, and I didn't even meet Gerry until a year after I started coming to FUSN. He was on a sabbatical in Australia. But I quickly became very familiar with his signature and well-known legacy of empowered lay leadership. There were the lay ministers. He started them when he first came in '79, and you can find Brenda Roberts down here, and she'll tell you about it because she was one of the first ones. There was FUSN's famous support for the Newton Food Pantry. And, well, I don't see her, but you could ask, oh, there's Jackie Colby, right up here in the second row. You could ask her about that because she had one of those innocent lunches with Gerry and found herself running the food pantry. There was our worship committee, and that empowered worship committee facilitated legendary lay-led services once a month, the entire year. And there was what I called Gerry's roving mic. That was in the sanctuary after the sermon when he gave us an opportunity to explore what we thought of the sermon, what we felt, and our own spiritual path. And you'll get a chance to experience that later today. Mostly I remember Gerry radiating warmth, and really gentle warmth, to everyone he met. And real honest and authentic care and respect, deep, deep respect for their individual dignity. He was I might add, totally averse to conflict with individuals, staff, and members alike, but he was utterly and completely staunch when it came to moral and social justice issues. I learned that he had marched with James Reed in Selma. And in the 90s, he was awarded the City of Newton's it was called the City of Newton's Human Rights Award. And he always insisted, frankly, that that award belonged to the congregation, not just him. Now, I became active in FUSN's leadership, lay leadership, in the late 80s, actually. Gerry was pretty well established by then, and the congregation seemed to have fully recovered from the really tumultuous 70s. I served on the board during Gerry's 14th, 15th, and 16th years of ministry here. He was really well established by then. I was even shanghaied into being the chair of the board for the year 94-95. So I got to be pretty familiar with Gerry's style. I had almost weekly meetings with him for that year. And I have to tell you, it never ceased to amaze me how he could just quietly and very carefully facilitate and inspire every lay leader's work, no matter what they were doing, so that we always felt inspired and empowered, but never, and always supported, but never ever controlled or dictated or pushed around. Now, I think it was in the fall of '93, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, when a 150-pound chunk of our tower, one whole of those four pointed pinnacles, fell down and impaled itself on its steel reinforcing rod in the front lawn. We had a huge orange fence cordoning off the entire yard out there while we tried to decide what to do. And of course, we debated that for some time. Should we tear down the tower? That only cost $400,000. Should we repair it? Well, that only cost $600,000. Fundraising professionals encouraged us to think bigger than the tower, because people don't give to towers, but they do give to visions. Now, I gotta tell you, the vision crafted by our amazing, empowered lay leaders inspired a cleanup of this entire West Newton Square. It also inspired the congregation to raise well over $950,000, almost 5 times the amount raised in the capital campaign 10 years earlier. FUSN also was experiencing space problems in the early 90s due to a ballooning RE program. According to Gerry, even the sanctuary seemed to be crowded at times. Gerry wanted to encourage growth in members at those Sunday services, and I remember him citing numbers from growth consultants in the UUA that said if a sanctuary looked too full, that people who were visiting would turn away and not come. So FUSN embarked on a controversial experiment with 2 Sunday services in the fall of 1994. What a year. We were trying to wipe out an operating budget deficit, run an annual canvass at the same time as that ambitious $950,000 capital campaign to repair that crumbling tower, and hold 2 Sunday services for the first time in our life every Sunday. So the extraordinary efforts made by all of those many, many lay leaders that Gerry empowered and inspired, we actually did it all. The annual canvass increased both in the number of pledges and the average pledge amount. The capital campaign exceeded its goal. In fact, I think it exceeded $1 million. The RE program for grades 1 through 8 registered 239 children. And the youth program registered 50, and they had a mailing list of 100. The average total attendance at those 2 services was 194 people. And you can compare that to this past year's average attendance of 180. It didn't last. Gerry ended up in the hospital with a flare-up of his Crohn's disease. He began medical leave at the end of April '95. Somehow, the Empowered Worship Committee managed to fill the pulpit every single Sunday for the next 3 months. Did we work Gerry too hard? Did he work himself too hard? The UUA and other church consultants had been telling us for years that we needed to call a second minister. Well, Gerry did return, And he returned in September of 95. And by June of 96, FUSN had voted to search and call for an associate minister. The search committee, with Gerry Krick as an ex officio member, did sort through 32 candidates for this position. And in February of 97, shortly after the search committee had reviewed the final 3 candidates, Gerry announced that he'd be retiring in a year. When we told the candidates this news, all 3 insisted on pursuing the position anyway. We were a healthy, vibrant congregation. They wanted to join us. It was a bittersweet ending, though. FUSN did call an associate minister in 97, but she had only a single year with Gerry. And we had barely more than that to cope with the complex feelings surrounding such a long ministry, and barely enough time to say goodbye.
Now here's a roundup of all the news from the past newsletters of the First Unitarian Society in Newton. November 18th, 1979, the Reverend Gerry Krick will be preaching his first sermon, The Fruits of Thanksgiving. And don't forget, the Bridge Group will be meeting on November 30th at the Colbys. December 6, 1979, the Hospitality Committee is looking for volunteers to light the fireplace in the Alliance Room each Sunday during coffee hour. Please leave donations of logs, twigs, and branches in the archway. January 6, 1980, Reverend Gerry Krick announces that next Sunday he will preach on some of the fundamentals of Muslim beliefs, since in his words, it is essential that we have accurate information about Muslim beliefs if we are to maintain peace in our world. January 20th, 1980, and the Board of Trustees voted that the church temperature in the sanctuary be set at 55 degrees during the winter and advised everyone to wear appropriate warm clothing. May 2nd, 1982, some of you who work downtown may want to meet for lunch at 11:45 at the Magic Pan in Quincy Market to discuss how our church might use computer technology. April 11th, 1982, sign up now for Ferry Beach Week. Fees this year are $16 per person, or $10 if you use the campsite. January 8th, 1984, the Social Concerns Committee is excited about the opening of a food pantry in the church basement. However, we need volunteers to clean and paint this coming Saturday. February 5th, 1984, remember our minister will begin a seminar in his own home on building your own theology. February 12th, 1984, please note that every telephone call you make from the church kitchen costs us money. Please only make brief calls. February 26th, 1984, now is the time to sign up in the kitchen for dinner for 7, where you can get to know each other better, and remember to bring a potluck. September 13th, 1987, coffee, for us to continue to have our wonderful social hour every Sunday. Each family must bring in 1 pound of coffee. April 12th, 1992, last week the Church Council voted unanimously to recommend to the annual meeting that the church community affirm and honor same-sex unions in the sanctuary, also services for dedication for children of same-sex partners. January 9th, 1994, the next welcoming congregation course begins today in the Alliance Room, and learn about gay, lesbian, bisexual, and straight concerns. January 16th, 1994, remember next month to attend the congregational meeting to vote on having 2 services and school sessions each Sunday morning beginning next year. Finally, at coffee hour today, you will have the opportunity to buy the latest light bulb that does more than light the room. Save money, energy, and help the environment. January 23rd, 1994, the Alliance is publishing a cookbook. This is your last chance to submit recipes. January 30th, 1994, Come join us for an organ crawl next Sunday. We'll see the 5 divisions of the organ and the 2,950 pipes. Wear old clothes and sneakers. February 13th, 1994, round 3 of the FUSN check-in program begins March 1st. People are paired and call each other once a month to see how they are faring. Partners are changed every 3 months. February 27th, 1994, Noreen Kimball invites everyone to bring a bag lunch after church and join her in visiting the Wellesley College greenhouse to view their collections of spring bulbs and desert gardens. March 6, 1994, the next meeting of singles at FUSN, which meets regularly for fellowship, socializing, and support, will be a brown bag lunch on March 27th in the Alliance Room, followed by a walk in Cold Springs Park. March 27th, 1994, attention computophiles, anyone interested in helping to create a PC-based heating management system in the church, call Bob Persons. April 17th, 1994, last Saturday, at the annual meeting of the Mass Bay District of the Unitarian Universalist Church, made up of over 60 churches, chose FUSN as the Church of the Year because it is a living, growing model of how to live Unitarian Universalist principles in one's community. September 17th, 1995, would you like to spend a week next April in a lovely old villa in Provence? Learn more at the next Enchanted April meeting after services next Sunday. September 7th, 1997, Gerry Krick has announced that he will be retiring next September and that our church needs to prepare for this transition. Together, he hopes that we can reach some important goals. And the Bridge Group will meet this Friday at the Colby's. September 14th, 1997, a memorial service will be held at 2 p.m. this afternoon for Robert James, son of Julian James, minister at FUSN from 1885 to 1922. Also join us on October 1st for a celebration of music of Roberta Humay's 35 years as music director. October 5th, 1997. Brethren and sisters, young and old, prepare for the Shaker meeting in the parish hall next Sunday. And our minister is asking all to include their email addresses for the new directory. We may soon have parts of our newsletter online. October 19th, 1997, the Board of Trustees has approved a plan to create a Krick Endowment Fund to fund a monthly retirement pension for Gerry as a retirement gift. And that's all the news from the First Unitarian Society of Newton, where all the ministers are devoted, all the parishioners discerning, and all the children delightful.
Good morning. I'm Pete Smith, and I have been spending several weeks actually going through all 17, 18 years of annual reports, getting quotes from Gerry about social action and social concerns, and looking at and reading through every annual report from the social concerns and social action meetings. However, today I will not regale you with every word from each of those reports. I only have a few minutes to just highlight a few of these things, and I really want to appreciate also Ed and Joan Lerner and Vinny Estrada, who helped me with information about the Vietnamese boat people. Reverend Gerry Krick always led us in reaching out to the larger community. That was a big part of his ministry. One dramatic example that took place in 1980, early in Gerry's tenure, occurred when a large group of from the congregation supported an extended family of what commonly were called Vietnamese boat people. In Gerry's first annual report to the congregation in 1980, he praised the Reborn Social Concerns Committee, which he said worked so hard to bring Vietnamese refugees to Newton. Gerry called it heartwarming to see the way 60 members of our church joined forces to raise money, prepare a home, and to see to the needs of these refugees who had suffered so much. He said Joan and Ed Lerner, co-chairs, gave this committee purpose and direction. Gerry said Benny Estrada and Emily Caton worked most closely with the family, giving them hours of their time. The children of the Vietnamese family eventually went to Newton schools, and Dwayne Matheson, who's still at FUSN, as you know, maybe here today even, helped the children's father get a job. In Gerry's 1981 annual report, he noted that we needed to strengthen our efforts to reach out to the larger community and implement our religious principles. To use Gerry's words, he said, "We have done a great deal already, but there are still serious needs within the greater Boston community to which we could respond." I think this kind of phrasing that Gerry used when he was providing leadership in social concerns is indicative of the way he helped us move forward. The poor are growing in number, and programs to assist them are being terminated. Someone here may know of a way our church could do something in response to such problems. At the end of this report, he said, "With regard to the nuclear arms freeze, which comes before you tonight, I support the endorsement of this policy. But I also want to hear from those who may personally endorse the freeze, but oppose church endorsement. Tonight, I hope we will carefully examine what it means when a church takes a stand on such an issue. I know you will listen carefully to those with whom you disagree, so that we may learn from each other. Because of the respect I have seen between and among you, controversy need not be avoided." Paraphrasing Jose Ballou, a Universalist minister, 1771 to 1852, Gerry said, "With love, no disagreement can hurt us. Without love, no agreement can help us." In June of 1985, Gerry had praises for what he described as some of the best lay-led services ever presented at our church on topics including hunger and El Salvador deportation problems. He said these lay-led services climaxed with our children's production of Peace Child right here in the parish hall. Gerry noted that this drama, which Carolyn Kirby and Rob Eichler produced and directed, brought more than 200 people to our church. In January 1986, the Social Concerns Committee called a special congregational meeting, and FUSN was dedicated as a peace site by unanimous vote of the congregation. A very unusual vote occurrence for people with so many different points of view. Religious Education Committee called Social Concerns to plan. Religious Education Committee joined Social Concerns to plan the dedication celebration. It was also in 1986, Joan Lerner told me, that Gerry came to the trustees and said he would be marrying a gay couple the following weekend. Joan said Gerry did not ask the board, he just informed them. Another way that he led us forward. Finally, in 1989, the Social Concerns Gay and Lesbian Bisexual group participated with Gerry in an awareness-building service. They also got the trustees to support the Welcoming Congregation program, as well as a May service during Gay Pride Week. It was May 5th, 1991, when Gerry changed the previously announced sermon topic to the terrible chasm. He introduced Shakur Ali, an African-American and former soldier, who spoke about his experience with gangs in Roxbury. The response of the congregation led to an ongoing FUSN program mentoring inner-city children and weekend activities, led by Michelle Walsh, who's with us today. Under the auspices of the UU Urban Ministry, it is still going. The students named it Stand High, Stand United, and now it is called Roxbury Youth Program Weekend. In 1997, the congregation hosted an important event in response to Jerry's message about the growing divide between rich and poor. The event, Seeking Common Ground Toward a Fair Economy, featured representatives from United for a Fair Economy, Representative Barney Frank, and Reverend Jeffrey Brown, a co-founder of the 10-Point Coalition. The event attracted 140 people from the larger community, including other congregations and denominations. In Jerry's 1998 annual report, he said, "More people need to know about us." He gave us important advice about social action. He put it this way: "We need to get our message out with one neighbor telling another about our congregation, a friend telling a friend, mentioning our social action projects to an acquaintance." This morning, together, we certainly can appreciate and respect Gerry Krick's advice. Thank you.
Many of you will remember Jerry stepping down from the pulpit and having people comment on what he just... This way? Yes. Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Carol. And he would walk down the aisle and ask for comments. And sometimes the comments were critical of what he had said. And sometimes people just talked about whatever they felt like. So, in the spirit of Gerry Krick, I'm going to walk down here, and if you want to make any comments or fill in any gaps, please feel free.
My name is Judy Friedman, and I've been coming to this church since the 70s, long time, and I do remember Jerry very well and loved him. I'm going to talk very briefly about a service that Jerry gave or promoted back in 1992 that really describes his essence. There had been a terrible incident of a gay sailor being murdered by one of his shipmates back in 1992. And it was just a horrible thing. It had been throughout the news. And Jerry, in all his wisdom, invited the mother of this sailor to come to our service and speak to us. He gave up his pulpit that morning. I don't remember if he had much to do with the service. It was typically Jerry just kind of being there, enabling this to happen. And she just talked about the pain of the family, and also how many people from all over the world had written letters to her and called her. And she also, I remember her also saying that she didn't know her son was gay. She was homophobic before this whole thing happened. And everything changed. It was the one good thing that maybe came out of this horrible incident. That so many of her, the gay friends of her son and family and friends just kind of supported her and called her, and she was just so gratified. So her mission now in life was to go around to groups like ours and talk about how we needed to love and accept, not hate. And I think that Jerry's doing that morning was an act of love, and I still remember that service.
I'm Adrian Fink. Jerry was the first minister that I knew here. I went to Sunday school here a long time ago, and this might be hard for people to believe, especially those of you who knew me 30 years ago, but I actually looked up to him for a long time, and he helped me a lot of times when I needed help, and he's just really one of the best human beings I've ever met. Thanks.
I'm Bob Ellerson. I rarely spoke at the talkback sessions when Jerry was a minister because of all the wonderful things that people said in the congregation. I just looked up to the thoughts and ideas that folks had, and Jerry really brought that out in people. Also, in listening to this wonderful service today, it's almost as if Jerry was a time traveler. It's like he had the best of consciousness and sensibilities of what people have now in 2014, and somehow we had these way back in the 1980s and 1990s, and was really ahead of many of the very important social issues and way ahead of his time.
I'm Jenny Lerner, and I grew up in this church, and I can hardly speak today without crying. Gerry Krick was a rock in my family's life. He helped us stay together as a family. He did my parents' 25th wedding anniversary. Some of you were at that. He saw us through everything, and we had tough times. I'm so moved that you're doing this today. Thank you, everyone who did this. I'll say also that my daughter, Sienna, is videotaping the service. Because my parents aren't able to be here today, Joan and Nick Lerner. And Sienna's going to give this to them as a surprise anniversary present. And we will edit out the personal joys and sorrows. And if anyone would like a copy, just let us know.
I'm Tim Wells. I wanted to I don't want to speak too long. There's so many facets of Gerry that were important to me. I came, first of all, his witty and profound sermons were really a marvel to me and a delight. I couldn't miss a Sunday. I would even travel from work in Connecticut to get here for Sunday services. His was a robust ministry, the kind that I always thought that a minister should do. I still remember his emphasis in emphasizing to us an understanding and a deep understanding of other religions, traditions. His comments on Sufism, the whirling dervishes in the community, and such a robust personality. I recall him making a mistake in actually making an anti-Muslim remark inadvertently, and I don't remember the fellow's name, but the last name was Abu Jabir, and I remember because the woman of that couple is quite a noted writer, a novelist, I think now. And immediately, in talkback, the husband of that pair got up and objected strongly to what he'd said. Gerry stopped in place, made the most abject and yet honest apology, and pointed out how this is the reason that we needed to continue on with this sort of thing. I found also at a personal level something about this. This was the first time I was going to attempt to move. I come out of a traditional Southern middle-class, black, educated environment, and we were determined to not engage over our lifetimes with the slights, humiliations, pomposities of whites. And I was going to attempt to break out of that and attempt intimacy with people in something that was most important, and that is my spiritual life. And Gerry, I met with some disappointments from time to time here, and at one point was leaving, and Gerry pointed out how this was the time to truly engage and to give myself a chance as well as these people that I was attempting to do. It cemented my relationship here. Things didn't particularly change. but it seems to be a relationship, and I found a way to engage and be a part of this community. I miss him terribly. He is my minister. He's everything the Unitarianism, universal Unitarianism was about. I'd also like to point out, once I was on a plane going to my hometown, Norfolk, Virginia, which is, for my family, a point of origin, not all these other parts of the world. And there beside me was Gerry, and he was going to a conference that was going to be on the origination, the antecedents of Black Americans in Unitarian Universalism, which I didn't realize had started in my town in the 1880s, 1890s. And at this conference, he sat as a student of what was occurring. My great disappointment was he didn't have a chance to meet my mother, who was then hospitalized. I couldn't pull the two together because I wanted to show her that everything that she had taught and encouraged me to look forward to in good men and good people, I felt exemplified in this man.
And I'm Jennifer Wells, and I loved Gerry's sermon so much that when I taught Sunday school, I wouldn't hear him, so I would talk to him afterwards, and he always gave me a copy of it because I thought his sermons were incredible. I also like to talk back, and unlike other people, I did it several times. And one time I criticized him, and he asked me out to coffee afterwards and said that he thought my criticism was so good, he invited me to do a lay service. So that was one of the things. I just thought he always listened to people, and he paid attention, and if your parents died, he called and let you know that he was sorry that your parents had died. And I will never forget him. Thank you.
My name is George Sathis. We both grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, and ours was a mixed marriage. We crossed ethnic lines and religious lines. At that time, it was very daring. We became Unitarians in 1956, I think it was, and the minister in Bloomington, Indiana, became a close friend who invited us even to his summer home in Colorado. When we left and moved to St. Louis, we found a church that had stained glass windows. Formality, it was very hard to accept because at one time we had a talk back, this was Indiana, we used to have a talk back in the movie theater lobby. That was where the church was, in the movie theater. Eventually they built a church. At any rate, we moved to this part of the country in 1968, came into the front door and found there were angels and stained glass. What was going on here? And the minister was not exactly the most youthful minister. I can't even remember his name. So we bided our time for a while until Gerry came. And then things changed. I think he changed the congregation, he changed the church, and he changed our lives. And we became friends, and something that we valued all of those years. It was very sad to see him leave. And I think his spirit is still here.
I'll make this quick. It's just such an important story. I mean, he was so amazing, and he was such a big ideas people. Sorry, I of all people. No. He was such a powerhouse in his own gentle way because he was intellectually so sharp and so appreciative of big ideas. He was also the kindest person I have ever known in my life, and I think it was his interpersonal kindness that was the most powerful aspect of his character. When Jenny Lerner was my babysitter back in the old days, my then 6-year-old Nora was here on one Sunday, and after Sunday school, she wandered into his office and he was busy. And so that was that, and we, packed up and went home. And at about 1:30, the phone rang, and I answered it, and it was Gerry. And he said he wanted to talk to Nora. And so she trotted in, and they had this little conversation. And so I said, "Oh, honey, what was that about?" And she said, "Well, he's coming for tea." And so she made a pot of tea, and she waited in the living room, and he showed up. He knocked on the front door. They were in there for maybe 4 minutes, and that was that. I have no idea what they talked about to this day, but he's just such a wonderful, wonderful man. So.
Thank you, Peggy. Later after the service, Peggy Ellison produced a video, and I hope you'll want to see it in a children's chapel. Okay. Yes.
You can. Announcement on the bridge.
There's going to be one soon. He had a very broad interest, and I don't know how many of you know, and I didn't know too much about it, but he was involved in preterm, which is one of the very early abortion clinics in Boston. And I don't know whether there were other people here from the church, but this was a pretty early idea, and he was pretty faithful about the need for support for people who had no support in the city at all.
Just wanted to remember that Gerry came with a family, and a wonderful family. And his wife Paula sang in the choir, and his daughters, and they were part of the fabric of who he was.
Jerry's daughter, one of his daughters, is in Maine. She's having her second child. And I don't know what Paula is. Do you know? West Coast, because I couldn't get her. And Caleb and Ken. What? Kelder lives here in Newton. What? I paid for it.
A really nice thing about the service today is that all the Krick ladies know about this service. I've been in touch with Kelder, who lives in Plymouth, and Paula and Kaylee, who are on the West Coast in Washington, and they're just thrilled. Yeah, they're just absolutely thrilled about this service. So we should get them a copy of the movie. Just a real quick comment. I don't know if any of you remember the service where Gerry sang the entire service. That was my favorite service. It just got to me. He had a beautiful voice, and he sang all these wonderful hymns and songs, and I cried throughout most of it. And that's the sermon I remember the most. It just really touched me, and just the essence of the man seemed to seemed to come out. It was wonderful. I just loved him.
Roberta said that she tried to coax him to sing even more because he had such a wonderful voice.
Well, I'm Tom Gross, and I'll make it brief. But number one, Gerry married Beverly and I at 33 years ago. That was very special. But a good memory of one story. One year, Bev and I couldn't go to Ferry Beach, and our daughter Kimberly was going with another family, and she forgot her bag. And the reason we weren't going was because I had to work that Saturday, driving to Maine. So I drove the bag with me, and I got a big tractor trailer, and I got to Ferry Beach, and pulled over and walked down to Quillen with Kim's bag, and there was Gerry. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. So Gerry says, "Come on in, I'll cook breakfast for you." I'm saying, "Gerry, you're the minister. You must be more busy, to take care of me." He says, "Oh no, I grew up on a farm, And we had trucks coming in all the time early in the morning. And our parents would, they cooked for the truck drivers, so he felt real comfortable with it. And he cooked breakfast for me, made coffee, and it's a very special memory that I have of Jerry.
It's going on so long, I want to make sure that anyone who wants to say anything, this service may not come around again until 30 years.
I just want hi, I'm Betsy Levitt. I don't know what to say. There's not much to say except thank you. It was just the most incredible service. And I've been in tears the entire time. And I think it's clear we all miss Jerry a lot. He's still very present. So thanks so much.
I was with Jerry just hours or maybe a day before he died. His brother had come in and they were staying at our house, so I went to the house to pick up the brother to bring him back. And so I went into Jerry and he was still alert. And I said, Jerry, I love you. And he right away, in the last words, he said something complimentary about me. That was so Jerry.
Yeah.
We miss you.
Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Spirit of life. With these words from the 19th Psalm, Jerry began each Sunday sermon. And these words will always characterize Jerry for me. For to the very end, he wanted his words and his heart to be true, not only to an external spirit and essence he saw in the world, but to himself. Whatever meaning attaches to the words holy man, Jerry was that. He actively sought to understand this world, to make some sense of the universe, no matter how ambiguous, chaotic, or senseless it may have seemed to us. In doing this, he allowed himself to be vulnerable to being thought naive or unworldly. He turned criticism of himself or his sermons into an opportunity to learn about himself and what he might change. And his final words to us were, so as I complete my ministry, let me thank you for all the fine work you as lay people have done for our congregation, and let me encourage you to take on the task of letting others know about this extraordinary congregation. So be it.